Okay, Mum, so tell me about how you got married and how that came about.
Well, in the second year that I was working as a volunteer in Maidan, and Mac was the Australian and other Commonwealth countries representative, diplomatic representative. So there were times that I needed to see him, and as apart from meeting him socially at various occasions. And when I told him that I was planning to take a bus to Aceh, he didn't try to stop me at all, even though I'd be going through rebel country. But he was very interested when I came back to hear the stories and so on. I won't go into that here. So we became closer, and then when my parents decided they wanted to visit me during a trip around Asia that they were planning to take, their first overseas trip, I was a bit concerned about where they would stay, because there was virtually hardly any respectable accommodation in Maidan in those days. We're talking about the late 1950s. And Max simply said, "Oh, they can stay here." That wasn't unusual. He often had visitors from various nationalities staying there or visiting him. I can remember there was one visit from the Cuban ambassador, and they had dinner together and got on famously smoking cigars and so on. Anyway, that was the sort of man that Mac was, very hospitable, very interested in people, and very simpatico with people. Anyway, you've got the section about Lily and the barmaid from Kalgoorlie. So our relationship developed through that time until I think I said to him, "Now look, what's the future of this relationship? I'm willing to marry you." And he said, "Well, that's good." And he said, "But it won't be straightforward, because I'm still officially married to my wife, who lives in Cornwall and whom I haven't seen for years. She's never wanted to return to Asia, although she had spent time when she was younger in India and in Burma. She didn't ever want to come back to Asia. And he was convinced that his future lay in the Asian area. And he'd already been the British consul in southern Thailand, and now he was the British consul in Sumatra. Now, she, at one stage, his wife, agreed to a divorce, but maybe a couple of months later, she changed her mind. She was unpredictable because she was an alcoholic, and for him, he felt, I can't plan anything, my future life or whatever, without a divorce and without marrying me. He talked the situation over with his friend, the Indian consul, SL call, who later told me that he'd come and talk to him. I want to talk about a personal matter. I want to marry Elaine. And SL said, do you love her? Does she love you? Yes, yes. Well, then you've got to go through it. Let's not worry about the age difference, which was 22 years. So then he talked to another friend who worked for Harrison Crossfield, a plantation company, but who was a lawyer. And he said, how am I going to manage this? And he said, and Mac and I had discussed this, and I said, well, Arthur Miller and Marilyn Monroe have just got a divorce for him in Mexico, so that they could get married. If they can do it, we can too. And so explored that. And when I came back to Australia and got a job in Canberra, it only lasted about 3 months because things progressed. He took leave, came to Australia, and we sailed on the Fair Sea, an Italian ship, to Panama via New Zealand and Tahiti. We got off at Panama and then flew to Mexico City. Now, how to find the arrangement by which you can get divorced and then married again in New Zealand, in Mexico. And so he went to the British Embassy and said that this is what he wanted to do. They weren't terribly impressed, even though he was a member of the diplomatic service. But they referred him to a Mexican lawyer in Mexico City. So we went to see him, and he said, well, there are various kinds of divorces in Mexico. Nearly every state, in Mexico is a federation, nearly every state has their own laws dealing with divorce. And he said, presumably you don't want to wait too long, so I suggest you go to Ciudad Juarez, which is on the border with the United States, just the other side of the Rio Grande, and find a lawyer there. He couldn't recommend anyone. So we went by bus all the way up Mexico to Ciudad Juarez. I'll just call it Juarez for here on. And there's no British representative there, but there was an American consul, of course. So we went there, got the name of several names, but we chose a lawyer whose offices were in the hotel where we were staying. And he turned out to be an absolutely lovely man. Very gentle. He wasn't, he wasn't one of these lawyers who were dealing with the Marilyn Monroes and Arthur Millers of the world. He had a modest office. And he said, well, now you've got a choice. You can get a quickie, a wallpaper divorce, or you can get one where we advertise your intention to divorce in the local newspaper in Juarez, and then you have to wait 6 weeks, I think it was, for, if there are no objections to the divorce in that time, then you can go ahead and be granted a divorce in this. So we chose that one. A wallpaper divorce didn't sound like the best way to go. So then, since we had to wait, we decided we'd travel around more other parts of Mexico, fill in time for the 6 weeks, and then I think we flew back to Juarez. The divorce was approved because no one knew what was happening, and there was no objection to the divorce. And then we got married at a registry office, where we queued up with a very diverse group of people who were queuing up for a registry office divorce, registry office marriage, including a couple who looked like they were middle-aged, but maybe aged because they were clearly farmers, and the prospective wife was very pregnant. And we had to have 2 witnesses. So we asked, I think the lawyer was one of the witnesses, and just someone in the queue was another witness. And so thus we got married. And we came back to Mexico City by train. It was a very interesting journey, because on the train there was a very good-looking Catholic priest who was surrounded by a little coterie of people who were friendly with him and obviously knew him. And it turned out that he had been an opera singer, and he was singing to this group and also the whole carriage. And he invited us over to join him. He was a priest in Peru, and although a Mexican national. And we had this absolutely fascinating time because he was singing opera. His name will come back to me, I think. Okay, back to Mexico City. Then we took a bus down to the southern border of Mexico with El Salvador. And we had to leave the bus on the Mexican side of the border, walk across to the El Salvador side of the border, and then there was no obvious transport from there to the capital of Salvador. But a couple of men who could see that we were somewhat lost said, "Can we help you?" And we said, well, yeah, we need to get to the capital. And he said, well, there's my utility truck. If you're prepared to sit on the tray at the back, you can come with us. And so he said yes. And so we're sailing along the road, and it starts to rain. And lo and behold, they stop to look around and say, "Are you all right there?" You know, we said we were until you stopped. Keep going because the rain is going over us. Finally, we got to El Salvador. And from there on, we just went country by country through Central America until we got to Costa Rica, and then we actually flew to Panama City.